troubled heart of their land.
Woman? Well, move on. She can turn to the Bethlehem.
Hello, friends. If you're looking for an in depth review of Ben-Hur 1959, you're in the right place. In this video, we'll cover the full story, the incredible cast, box office performance, and standout performances. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Let's dive right in. The story begins in the ancient world of Judea under the powerful rule of the Roman Empire, where political control and cultural tension shape everyday life. At the center of this grand narrative is Judah Ben-Hur, played by Charlton Heston, a wealthy and respected Jewish prince living in Jerusalem. Judah is known not only for his noble status, but also for his strong sense of honor, loyalty to his people, and deep connection to his family. His life at the beginning is one of privilege, stability, and influence, surrounded by trusted companions and a household that reflects both tradition and strength. However, beneath this calm and structured life lies a growing tension between the Roman authorities and the Jewish population, creating an environment where even small conflicts can lead to devastating consequences. One of the most important relationships in Judah's life is his childhood friendship with Mesala, played by Stephen Boyd. Mesala, once a close and trusted friend, returns to Jerusalem as a Roman military commander, representing the very power that now controls the land. At first, their reunion carries a sense of warmth and nostalgia, as both men remember their shared past and the bond they once had. However, it quickly becomes clear that time and loyalty have changed them in very different ways. Mesala is now fully devoted to Rome, believing in its authority and expecting complete obedience from those under its rule. Judah, on the other hand, remains loyal to his people and their traditions, unwilling to betray his identity or submit blindly to Roman dominance. This difference in ideology becomes the foundation of their conflict. What begins as a friendly reunion slowly transforms into a tense and meaningful confrontation. Messala demands that Judah support Roman authority by identifying and reporting any signs of rebellion among his people. For Messala, this is not just a political request, it is a test of loyalty. But for Judah, it is an impossible choice, as it would mean betraying his own community. His refusal is calm but firm, reflecting his moral strength and commitment to justice. This moment marks the turning point in their relationship, as friendship gives way to opposition and trust is replaced by tension. As the story progresses, the political environment grows more unstable. The Roman presence becomes increasingly forceful, and the gap between rulers and the ruled widens. Judah tries to maintain his position without engaging in conflict, but the situation around him becomes more difficult to ignore. His household, once a place of peace, now exists under the shadow of uncertainty as Roman authority tightens its grip on Jerusalem. The narrative carefully builds this tension, showing how personal relationships are affected by larger political forces and how individual choices can carry significant consequences. The true conflict begins when a sudden and unexpected incident changes everything. During a Roman parade, a falling object from Judah's house accidentally injures a Roman official. Despite the lack of intent, Messala uses this moment as an opportunity to assert his power and punish Judah. What could have been resolved as an accident is instead turned into an act of rebellion in the eyes of Roman law. Messala's decision is not just about justice, it is about control, authority, and personal resentment. In a single moment, Judah's life is completely transformed. He is arrested, separated from his family, and sentenced to a harsh fate, while his mother and sister are taken away under uncertain conditions. This event marks the beginning of his journey from a life of privilege to one of suffering, endurance, and eventual transformation. The betrayal by Messala adds a deep emotional layer to the story, turning a political conflict into a personal one driven by loss, anger, and the desire for justice. The foundation of the story is fully established. Judah Ben-Hur is no longer just a noble prince, he is a man whose life has been shattered by betrayal and power. The world around him has shifted, and the journey ahead will test his strength, his beliefs, and his identity. Friendship has turned into rivalry, peace has turned into conflict, and a journey of struggle is about to begin. After his sudden arrest and the destruction of his former life, Judah Ben-Hur, played by Charlton Heston, is forced into a brutal journey that marks the beginning of his physical and emotional suffering. Stripped of his identity, separated from his family, and treated not as a nobleman but as a criminal, Judah is marched across harsh desert landscapes alongside other prisoners, all destined for slavery under Roman authority. This journey is not just a physical relocation, it represents the complete collapse of everything Judah once was. The dignity, power, and security he once held are replaced by exhaustion, pain, and uncertainty. The environment around him is unforgiving, with scorching heat, lack of water, and constant surveillance by Roman guards who show no compassion for the suffering of the prisoners. Every step forward becomes a test of endurance, and survival itself turns into a daily challenge. During this journey, one of the most significant moments occurs when Judah, weakened and close to collapse, is denied water by the Roman soldiers. In this critical moment, a mysterious figure, later understood to be Jesus Christ, steps forward and offers him water, showing an act of kindness in a world that has suddenly become cruel and indifferent. This brief yet powerful interaction leaves a lasting impression on Judah. It does not immediately change his situation, but it introduces a subtle emotional shift, a moment of humanity that stands in contrast to the harshness surrounding him. It becomes a symbolic point in his journey, representing hope and compassion in the midst of suffering, even though Judah himself is still driven more by pain and anger than by understanding. Eventually, Judah is taken to serve as a galley slave on a Roman warship, a fate reserved for those considered expendable. Here, the conditions become even more intense. Chained to a rowing bench, surrounded by other enslaved men, he is forced into a life of relentless labor where survival depends on physical strength, discipline, and the ability to endure constant pressure. The rhythm of the oars, controlled by the command of Roman officers, dictates every moment of his existence. There is no freedom, no rest, and no escape, only the continuous demand for effort and obedience. In this environment, Judah begins to adapt. His noble upbringing is replaced by raw determination, and his identity shifts from that of a prince to that of a survivor. This phase of his life also marks the beginning of his internal transformation. The betrayal by Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, remains a central force driving his thoughts. The memory of his family, taken from him without justice, fuels a growing sense of anger and the desire for revenge. However, alongside this anger, there is also the development of resilience. Judah learns to endure hardship, to focus his strength, and to maintain his will even in the most dehumanizing conditions. The discipline he develops during this time becomes a key part of his character, shaping the man he will eventually become. A major turning point occurs during a naval battle, where the Roman ship carrying Judah is attacked. In the chaos of the battle, the structured world of the galley collapses into confusion and destruction. Chains are broken, commands are lost, and survival becomes the only priority. Judah, despite being a slave, demonstrates courage and quick thinking, managing to free himself and survive the disaster. In a moment that changes his fate, he also saves the life of a Roman commander, Quintus Arrius, played by Jack Hawkins. This act of bravery shifts the perception of Judah from that of a disposable slave to a man of value and strength. As a result, Judah is freed from slavery and taken under the protection of Arrius, marking the end of his time as a galley slave and the beginning of a new chapter. However, while his physical circumstances improve, his internal journey is far from complete. The anger, the sense of injustice, and the memory of betrayal remain deeply rooted within him. His survival has given him strength, but it has not yet brought him peace. Judah Ben-Hur is no longer the man he once was. He has endured suffering, faced near death, and emerged stronger, more disciplined, and more determined. The journey from noble prince to slave has reshaped him, preparing him for the path ahead, a path that will be driven by purpose, conflict, and the search for justice. The fall has transformed him, the struggle has strengthened him, and a new chapter of destiny is about to begin. After surviving the brutal years of slavery and the chaos of the naval battle, Judah Ben-Hur, played by Charlton Heston, enters a completely new phase of life, one that stands in sharp contrast to the suffering he endured, yet remains deeply connected to his past. Rescued and taken under the protection of the Roman commander Quintus Arrius, portrayed by Jack Hawkins, Judah is no longer treated as a slave but as a man of honor and courage. Arrius, impressed by Judah's strength, discipline, and bravery during the battle, begins to see him not just as someone he saved, but as someone worthy of trust and respect. Over time, this relationship develops into something much deeper. Arrius adopts Judah as his son, giving him not only freedom but also a new identity within Roman society. This transformation is significant on many levels. Judah, once stripped of everything, now finds himself surrounded by wealth, status, and opportunity once again. He is trained, educated, and introduced into Roman elite life, learning the customs, discipline, and expectations of a powerful empire. His skills, particularly in physical endurance and chariot racing, begin to develop further, reflecting both his natural ability and the strength he gained through hardship. To the outside world, Judah appears to have fully transitioned into this new life, a respected Roman citizen with a future filled with possibility. However, beneath this surface, his past remains very much alive. The memory of his family, his mother and sister taken from him without justice, continues to shape his thoughts. Even more powerful is the memory of betrayal by Masala, played by Stephen Boyd, the friend who chose power over loyalty. These memories prevent Judah from fully embracing his new identity. While he respects Arius and values the life he has been given, he cannot forget where he came from or what was taken from him. His inner world is defined by a growing sense of purpose: to return to Judea, to find his family, and to confront the man responsible for his suffering. This internal conflict creates a complex character dynamic. Judah is no longer just a victim of injustice. He is now a man with the power, resources, and skills to act on his desires. Yet his motivations are not purely noble. Alongside his longing for his family is a deep desire for revenge, a need to face Mesala and hold him accountable for the destruction of his life. This emotional drive becomes the central force guiding his decisions, shaping the direction of his journey moving forward. Eventually, Judah makes the decision to leave his life in Rome and return to his homeland. This choice is not easy, as it means stepping away from comfort and security into a world filled with uncertainty and unresolved conflict. However, it also represents his commitment to his identity and his past. He is no longer running from what happened to him, he is moving toward it, ready to confront it directly. This return is not just physical but symbolic, marking the beginning of a new phase where the past and present will collide. As he travels back to Judea, Judah carries with him everything he has become: the strength gained from suffering, the discipline learned through hardship, and the power provided by his new status. But he also carries anger, pain, and unanswered questions. The man returning home is not the same one who left. He is stronger, more focused, and driven by a purpose that will not allow him to rest until it is fulfilled. The stage is set for the next major chapter of the story. Judah Ben-Hur is no longer a victim of circumstances. He is an active force moving toward confrontation, truth, and justice. His journey has taken him from privilege to suffering, and now from survival to purpose. A new identity has been formed, the past still burns within him, and the path toward revenge has begun. As Judah Ben-Hur, played by Charlton Heston, finally returns to Judea after years of transformation, his journey takes on a deeply emotional and personal tone. The land he once called home now feels both familiar and distant, shaped by the same Roman dominance but carrying new weight in his eyes. He is no longer the sheltered prince who once lived in comfort. He is a man hardened by suffering, disciplined by survival, and driven by purpose. Every step through Jerusalem brings back memories of his past life, his family, his home, and the moment everything was taken from him. These memories do not weaken him. Instead, they fuel his determination to uncover the truth and restore what was lost. His first goal is clear: to find his mother and sister, whose fate has remained unknown since the day of his arrest. This search becomes an emotional journey filled with uncertainty as he navigates through the same streets that once represented safety and belonging but now carry echoes of loss and silence. The people around him, though familiar in culture and environment, do not have the answers he seeks. The absence of clear information about his family creates a sense of tension as Judah begins to realize that the truth may be far more painful than he is prepared to face. During this time, Judah encounters individuals who provide fragments of information but no complete answers, deepening the mystery surrounding his family's fate. The uncertainty adds emotional weight to his journey, shifting his motivation from revenge alone to a deeper need for closure and understanding. His strength is tested not through physical struggle, but through patience and emotional endurance as he continues searching despite the lack of clarity. At the same time, the presence of Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, looms over everything. Now firmly established as a powerful Roman commander in Jerusalem, Messala represents not only the authority of Rome but also the personal betrayal that reshaped Judah's life. Their eventual confrontation feels inevitable as both men have followed paths that lead them back to each other, one driven by power and control, the other by justice and unresolved pain. The contrast between them has grown sharper over time, with Judah shaped by suffering and resilience, and Messala defined by ambition and dominance. When Judah finally comes face to face with Messala, the moment carries immense emotional tension. This is not simply a meeting between two men, it is the collision of past and present, friendship and betrayal, justice and power. Judah demands answers about his family, seeking not only information but acknowledgement of the wrong that was done to him. Messala, however, remains unchanged in his mindset, showing little remorse and maintaining his belief in the authority and necessity of his actions. His response reflects his continued loyalty to Rome and his refusal to accept responsibility for the suffering he caused. This confrontation does not resolve the conflict, instead, it intensifies it. Judah's hope for answers is met with resistance, and his desire for justice transforms into a more focused determination for revenge. The emotional weight of this encounter reinforces his purpose, making it clear that his journey is far from over. The tension between him and Messala becomes the driving force of the narrative, setting the stage for a conflict that will extend beyond words into action. By the end of this part, Judah's return to Jerusalem has achieved its first goal. He has faced the man responsible for his suffering. However, instead of bringing closure, this meeting deepens the conflict and strengthens his resolve. The search for his family continues, now intertwined with a growing need to challenge Messala directly and reclaim his sense of justice. The past has returned, the enemy stands before him, and the path toward confrontation is now unavoidable. As the tension in Jerusalem continues to build, Judah Ben-Hur, portrayed by Charlton Heston, moves deeper into a journey that becomes less about confrontation and more about painful discovery. After his intense meeting with Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, Judah's focus shifts once again toward the fate of his family, a question that has followed him through years of suffering, survival, and transformation. This time, however, the search begins to uncover answers, and with those answers comes a truth far more devastating than uncertainty. Through persistent effort and with the help of those who still remember his family, Judah finally learns what happened after his arrest. His mother and sister were not executed as he once feared, but instead imprisoned and later cast out from society after contracting a severe and feared disease. Forced into isolation, they were removed from the world of the living and sent to a place where hope rarely survives. This revelation hits Judah with overwhelming emotional force. For years, he held on to the belief that they might still be safe, that there was a chance to reunite and restore what was lost. Now, that hope is shattered and replaced with a reality filled with suffering, abandonment, and injustice. This moment marks one of the most emotionally intense points in Judah's journey. The strength that carried him through slavery, war, and survival is now tested in a completely different way. He is no longer fighting for freedom or identity. He is confronting the consequences of everything that was taken from him. The idea that his family suffered in silence, forgotten, and cast aside becomes almost unbearable. It is not just grief he experiences, but also guilt. The feeling that while he survived and eventually rose to power, they endured a fate worse than death. Despite the pain, Judah does not turn away from the truth. Instead, he chooses to face it directly. He seeks out the place where his mother and sister have been kept, knowing that what he is about to see may change him forever. When he finally finds them, the moment is filled with deep emotional weight. The reunion is not one of joy, but of sorrow and recognition. Time, suffering, and illness have changed them, yet the bond between them remains. In that silent connection, Judah is reminded of who he truly is, not a Roman citizen, not a warrior, but a son and a brother who has been separated from his family by injustice. This encounter transforms Judah's internal struggle. Until now, his desire for revenge against Messala was driven by betrayal and personal suffering. Now it becomes something far deeper and more intense. It is no longer just about what was done to him, it is about what was done to those he loved. The pain of seeing his family in such a condition strengthens his resolve, turning his anger into a focused determination that cannot be ignored. At the same time, this moment also introduces a quiet but important shift in his character. Alongside the anger and desire for revenge, there is also compassion and sorrow. He begins to understand that his journey is not just about destruction, but also about what remains after it. This internal conflict adds complexity to his motivations, making his path forward less certain but more meaningful. Meanwhile, Messala continues to represent everything Judah stands against. His position of power remains intact, and his belief in control and dominance has not changed. The contrast between the two men is now stronger than ever. One shaped by loss and searching for justice, the other defined by authority and unwilling to acknowledge the consequences of his actions. Their eventual confrontation is no longer just inevitable, it is necessary for the resolution of everything that has built up between them. By the end of this part, Judah Ben-Hur is no longer driven by hope or uncertainty. He is driven by truth. The discovery of his family's fate has stripped away any illusions and replaced them with a clear and powerful purpose. His journey is now fully defined, and every step he takes from this point forward carries the weight of everything he has seen and felt. The truth has been revealed, the pain has become real, and revenge is no longer a choice, it is a mission. As Judah Ben-Hur, portrayed by Charlton Heston, processes the devastating truth about his family, his path becomes sharper, more focused, and undeniably dangerous. The emotional weight of their suffering does not break him. Instead, it transforms into a powerful force that drives him forward. His desire for justice is no longer fueled only by betrayal or personal loss, but by a deep and unshakable need to confront the man responsible for destroying his life. That man, Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, stands as both his greatest enemy and the symbol of everything he must overcome. At this stage, the conflict between Judah and Messala evolves into something much larger than a personal grudge. It becomes a public rivalry, one that captures attention and begins to take shape within the cultural and political environment of Jerusalem. Messala, confident in his authority and reputation, believes that his dominance cannot be challenged. He sees Judah as a man from the past, someone who should have been broken by slavery and forgotten by history. However, Judah's return and his growing presence begin to disrupt that belief. There is a quiet but undeniable tension in every interaction between them, as both men recognize that their conflict is moving toward an unavoidable climax. The opportunity for that confrontation emerges through the grand spectacle of chariot racing, an event that represents not only entertainment but also power, status, and public recognition. In this world, the arena is more than just a place of competition. It is a stage where honor is tested, reputations are built or destroyed, and rivalries are settled in front of thousands. For Judah, the chariot race becomes the perfect battleground, a place where he can challenge Messala directly, not through words, but through action. However, this decision is not made lightly. Chariot racing is one of the most dangerous forms of competition, requiring not only physical strength but also precision, control, and the ability to make split-second decisions under extreme pressure. A single mistake can lead to catastrophic consequences. Judah understands the risk, but he also understands that this is his chance to face Messala on equal ground, where power is determined not by rank but by skill and courage. To prepare for this challenge, Judah begins an intense period of training. Under the guidance of experienced mentors, including those who recognize his potential, he refines his abilities as a charioteer. His past experiences, the endurance built through slavery, the discipline learned under Roman command, and the resilience shaped by suffering all come together in this preparation. Every movement, every turn, every moment of control is practiced repeatedly as he pushes himself beyond limits in order to be ready for what lies ahead. This training is not just physical, it is also mental. Judah must learn to control his emotions, to channel his anger into focus rather than recklessness. The arena will not reward rage, it will punish it. Victory requires clarity, precision, and the ability to remain calm even in the face of danger. This internal discipline becomes just as important as his physical strength, shaping him into a competitor capable of facing Messala at his level. Meanwhile, Messala prepares in his own way, confident in his experience and driven by his own sense of pride. He views the race as an opportunity to reassert his dominance and eliminate the challenge posed by Judah. To him, this is not just a competition, it is a chance to prove that power remains firmly in his hands. His approach is aggressive, calculated, and rooted in control, reflecting his overall character and belief in strength above all else. As the day of the race approaches, the atmosphere becomes charged with anticipation. The rivalry between Judah and Messala is no longer hidden, it is known, discussed, and expected to reach its peak in the arena. The crowd, the environment, and the stakes all contribute to a sense that something significant is about to happen. This is not just another race, it is the culmination of years of conflict, pain, and transformation. Everything is in place. Judah has prepared himself physically and mentally. Messala is ready to defend his dominance. The arena awaits, filled with expectation and tension. What began as a story of betrayal and survival has now reached the point where it will be decided through direct confrontation. The stage is set, the rivals are ready, and the race that will define their fate is about to begin. The long awaited moment finally arrives as Judah Ben-Hur, portrayed by Charlton Heston, steps into the massive arena where thousands of spectators have gathered to witness what has already become more than just a race. The atmosphere is intense, filled with anticipation, energy, and a sense that history is about to unfold. This is not merely a competition of speed or skill, it is the ultimate confrontation between two men whose lives have been shaped by betrayal, power, and the passage of time. Across the arena stands Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, confident and unshaken, fully prepared to assert his dominance once again. As the chariots are lined up and the tension builds, every detail becomes significant. The horses, the reins, the positioning, the silence before the signal. Judah stands focused, his mind clear despite the storm of emotions within him. All the pain, the memories, and the years of suffering have led to this exact moment. Across from him, Messala's presence is just as powerful, his confidence rooted in experience and his belief that no one can defeat him in the arena. The race begins with an explosive burst of energy, the chariots surge forward, and immediately the arena transforms into a scene of speed, chaos, and controlled aggression. Dust rises, wheels clash, and the sound of hooves echoes throughout the stadium. Each lap increases the intensity as competitors fight not only for position but for survival. This is a world where a single mistake can lead to destruction and where strategy is just as important as strength. Judah quickly proves that he is not just a participant, he is a serious contender. His control over the chariot, his connection with the horses, and his ability to navigate the chaos set him apart. Every movement is calculated, every turn precise. He does not allow his emotions to take over. Instead, he channels them into focus and determination. His presence in the race challenges Messala in a way no one else has. Messala, however, does not hold back. His approach is aggressive and ruthless, reflecting his personality and his need to dominate. He uses every tactic available to maintain control, pushing the limits of what is acceptable within the race. His goal is not just to win, it is to destroy his opponent, to eliminate Judah as a threat once and for all. This transforms the race into something far more dangerous, as the line between competition and conflict begins to disappear. As the laps continue, the race becomes increasingly violent. Chariots collide, drivers lose control, and the arena becomes a battlefield of destruction. The crowd watches in a mix of excitement and shock, fully aware that they are witnessing something extraordinary. In the middle of this chaos, the rivalry between Judah and Messala becomes the central focus, drawing all attention toward their struggle. The turning point comes when Messala's aggressive tactics begin to backfire. In his attempt to overpower Judah, he pushes too far, taking risks that disrupt his own control. Judah, maintaining his discipline and focus, is able to avoid these mistakes and use them to his advantage. The balance of power begins to shift, and for the first time, Messala's confidence is shaken. In the final moments of the race, everything reaches its peak. The speed, the tension, and the stakes all come together in a decisive outcome. Judah manages to maintain control and push forward, while Messala's downfall becomes inevitable. His attempt to dominate leads to his own defeat, as the chaos he created ultimately consumes him. When the race ends, Judah stands as the victor, not just in terms of the competition, but in the larger conflict that has defined his journey. However, this victory does not bring the satisfaction he once imagined. The cost of the race, the destruction, and the realization of everything that has happened leave a complex emotional impact. Messala, defeated and broken, represents the end of one chapter but not the resolution of everything. His downfall marks a turning point, but it does not erase the pain of the past or the suffering of Judah's family. Instead, it highlights the reality that victory in conflict does not always bring peace. The legendary chariot race has fulfilled its role as the central confrontation between Judah and Messala. The rivalry that began with friendship and betrayal has reached its climax in the most dramatic way possible. The enemy has fallen, the victory is won, but the story is far from over. After the intensity and destruction of the chariot race, a heavy silence begins to settle over the story of Judah Ben-Hur, portrayed by Charlton Heston. The victory he has achieved in the arena is undeniable. He has defeated Messala, the man who betrayed him, destroyed his life, and caused unimaginable suffering. From the outside, this moment appears to be the completion of his long journey of revenge. The crowd celebrates, his name is recognized, and his strength is acknowledged. Yet internally, something feels incomplete. The triumph does not bring the sense of peace or closure he once believed it would. Instead, it leaves behind a quiet emptiness, as if the outcome has resolved the conflict but not the pain that created it. As the dust of the arena settles, attention turns to Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, who has been critically injured in the chaos of the race. Once powerful, confident, and dominant, he is now broken, both physically and symbolically. His fall represents more than just defeat, it marks the collapse of everything he stood for. Judah, despite everything that has happened between them, chooses to see him one final time. This meeting is not driven by anger, but by a need for closure, for answers that still remain unresolved even after the race. In this final encounter, Messala delivers words that carry significant emotional weight. Instead of offering true regret or reconciliation, he reveals the truth about Judah's family in a way that is both revealing and cruel. He confirms that Judah's mother and sister are still alive, but he emphasizes their suffering, almost using it as a final act of control, a reminder that even in defeat, he can still inflict pain. This moment shifts the focus of the story once again. The conflict between Judah and Messala, which has driven so much of the narrative, begins to fade, replaced by something deeper and more personal. For Judah, this revelation reopens a wound that was never fully healed. The victory in the arena now feels secondary compared to the reality of his family's condition. The idea that they are alive yet suffering creates a new urgency within him, one that is no longer about revenge but about redemption, healing, and understanding. The anger that once guided him begins to lose its dominance, replaced by a more complex emotional state that includes compassion, grief, and reflection. This marks the beginning of a subtle but powerful transformation in Judah's character. For much of his journey, he has been driven by a clear and intense purpose to confront and defeat the man who wronged him. Now that this goal has been achieved, he is left facing a new question: what comes next? Without the direction of revenge, he must confront the deeper consequences of everything he has experienced and everything he has become. At the same time, the world around him continues to reflect larger changes. The presence of Roman authority remains strong, but the story begins to introduce a different kind of influence, one that is not based on power or control, but on faith, compassion, and forgiveness. Though still in the background at this stage, this influence begins to intersect with Judah's journey in subtle ways, hinting at a shift in the overall direction of the story. The contrast between Judah's external victory and internal struggle becomes the central focus of this part. He has achieved what he set out to do, yet he finds himself searching for something more, something that cannot be gained through strength or conflict. This realization does not come suddenly, but it begins to grow within him, setting the stage for a deeper transformation in the parts to come. Of this chapter, the story moves away from the physical battle that defined the earlier sections and begins to explore a more emotional and spiritual dimension. The rivalry with Messala has reached its conclusion, but Judah's journey is far from over. In many ways, it is only now that his true path begins to take shape. The enemy is gone, the truth has been revealed, and a new journey, one beyond revenge, is about to begin. After the fall of Mesala and the emotional weight of his final words, Judah Ben-Hur, portrayed by Charlton Heston, enters one of the most profound and transformative phases of his journey, a phase no longer driven by revenge but by a deep and urgent search for meaning, healing, and inner peace. The victory in the arena, once imagined as the ultimate goal, now feels distant and almost hollow. The intensity that once fueled his actions begins to fade, replaced by a growing awareness that the battles he has fought externally have not resolved the conflict within him. His thoughts are no longer centered on Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, but on his family, their suffering, their isolation, and the painful reality that despite everything he has achieved, he has not yet been able to save them. This realization shifts Judah's entire perspective. For the first time, he begins to question the path he has taken, not in terms of its necessity, but in terms of its outcome. Revenge gave him purpose, strength, and direction, but it did not bring healing. It did not restore his family, nor did it free him from the pain that has followed him since his betrayal. Instead, it has left him standing at a crossroads, forced to confront a truth that is difficult to accept: that justice achieved through conflict does not always lead to peace. As Judah continues his search for his mother and sister, his journey begins to intersect with a new and unexpected influence: the presence of Jesus Christ. Though not central in terms of screen time, this figure carries immense symbolic and emotional significance. Judah had encountered him once before, briefly, during a moment of extreme suffering, when he was offered kindness in a world that had shown him none. At that time, the gesture was simple, almost quiet, but it left a lasting impression, one that now begins to resurface as Judah reflects on everything he has experienced. The teachings and presence associated with this figure introduce a completely different perspective on life, one that contrasts sharply with the world Judah has been navigating. Instead of power, control, and revenge, the focus shifts toward compassion, forgiveness, and understanding. These ideas are not easy for Judah to accept. After everything he has endured, the concept of forgiveness feels almost impossible. How can one forgive betrayal, suffering, and injustice on such a scale? How can pain be answered with compassion instead of retaliation? Yet, despite his resistance, these questions begin to take root within him. They challenge the foundation of everything he has believed and everything that has driven him forward. This internal struggle becomes the central conflict of this part, not a battle between individuals, but a battle within Judah himself. On one side is the man shaped by anger and loss, still carrying the desire for control and resolution. On the other is the possibility of becoming someone different, someone capable of letting go of that anger and finding peace beyond revenge. As he finally reunites with his mother and sister in their place of suffering, this internal conflict reaches a deeply emotional level. Seeing them again, witnessing their condition, and feeling the bond that still connects them forces Judah to confront what truly matters. In their presence, the anger that once defined him begins to soften, replaced by a sense of love, responsibility, and sorrow. This moment does not erase his pain, but it changes how he experiences it. Instead of fueling rage, it begins to open the door to compassion. At the same time, the external world continues to reflect the larger themes of change and transformation. The influence of faith, represented through the presence of Jesus Christ, becomes more visible, suggesting that there is a greater force at work, one that operates beyond the systems of power and control that have dominated Judah's life. This idea introduces a sense of hope, not as a guarantee of immediate resolution, but as a possibility for something different, something beyond the cycle of suffering and revenge. Judah stands at a critical turning point. He has not fully transformed, and his internal struggle is far from over, but the direction of his journey has clearly shifted. The man who once lived for revenge is now beginning to search for something deeper, something that cannot be won in an arena or achieved through conflict. The pain is still there, the questions are growing stronger, and the path toward true peace is slowly beginning to reveal itself. As Judah Ben-Hur, portrayed by Charlton Heston, continues his emotional and spiritual journey, the story moves toward one of its most powerful and defining moments, an event that not only changes the course of his life but also reshapes everything he has come to believe about justice, suffering, and peace. The internal conflict that has been growing within him now reaches its peak as the world around him begins to reflect a profound and irreversible shift. At this stage, Judah is no longer the same man who once stood in the arena driven by revenge. The anger that once consumed him has weakened, replaced by a quiet struggle to understand a different way of living, one influenced by the presence and teachings of Jesus Christ. This influence, subtle yet powerful, has been shaping his thoughts and emotions, challenging his belief that strength comes only through dominance and control. Now, that influence becomes central as a major event unfolds in Jerusalem, the crucifixion. The scene carries immense emotional weight, not because of spectacle, but because of what it represents. It is a moment where injustice, suffering, and sacrifice intersect in a way that forces everyone who witnesses it to confront deeper truths. Judah finds himself present during this event not as a participant but as a witness. For a man who has experienced betrayal, loss, and pain, witnessing such a moment creates a powerful connection between his own suffering and something far greater. As the event unfolds, Judah recalls his earlier encounter, the moment when, in his weakest state as a slave, he was shown an unexpected act of kindness. That memory now gains new meaning. What once seemed like a small gesture now feels like the beginning of a message he is only just starting to understand. The idea that compassion can exist even in the face of cruelty begins to take hold in a deeper way. At the same time, nature itself seems to respond to the intensity of the moment. The atmosphere changes, reflecting the emotional and symbolic importance of what is happening. This is not just an event within the story, it is the turning point that brings together all the themes that have been building throughout Judah's journey: suffering, injustice, forgiveness, and redemption. For Judah, this experience becomes transformative. Standing there, witnessing a moment defined not by resistance but by acceptance and sacrifice, he begins to see his own life differently. The anger he has carried for so long starts to lose its power. In its place, there is a growing understanding that true strength may not lie in defeating an enemy, but in overcoming the need for revenge altogether. This realization reaches its most emotional point when Judah returns to his family. The suffering that once seemed endless now meets a moment of unexpected change. Without focusing on the physical details, the story presents this as a form of miracle, a turning point where hope replaces despair. For Judah, this is not just relief, it is confirmation that the path he is beginning to understand holds real meaning. His mother and sister, whose condition represented the deepest consequence of his past, now become part of his transformation. Their presence, their survival, and the possibility of healing bring a sense of closure that revenge never could. In this moment, Judah fully recognizes that the journey he has been on was never just about confronting his enemy, it was about discovering a different way to live. By the end of this part, Judah Ben-Hur is no longer defined by his past suffering or his desire for revenge. He has faced betrayal, endured hardship, achieved victory, and now finally begun to understand forgiveness. This transformation is not sudden or simple, it is the result of everything he has experienced coming together in one powerful realization. The pain has led to understanding, the anger has given way to peace, and a new life built on compassion rather than conflict has finally begun. After the overwhelming events that have reshaped his understanding of life, Judah Ben-Hur, portrayed by Charlton Heston, finds himself standing at the edge of a completely new emotional reality. The man who once lived entirely for revenge against Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, is no longer guided by that singular purpose. Instead, he is now caught in a powerful internal shift, one that replaces anger with reflection and obsession with understanding. The world has not changed, but the way he sees it has fundamentally transformed. The memory of everything he has endured continues to remain with him: the betrayal, the slavery, the loss of his family, and the long journey back to Jerusalem. But now, these memories no longer burn with the same destructive intensity. Instead, they begin to feel like part of a larger story, one that he is only now beginning to understand. Each moment of suffering, each moment of survival, and each moment of confrontation has led him to this point where the question is no longer how do I get revenge, but rather what does all of this truly mean? The influence of the teachings associated with Jesus Christ continues to echo within him, not as a force of pressure but as a quiet presence that challenges his deepest beliefs. The idea that forgiveness might be stronger than revenge is no longer something he rejects outright. Instead, it becomes something he begins to consider carefully and painfully as he reflects on the cost of everything he has done and everything he has witnessed. Even his final emotional connection to his family now carries a different meaning. Their suffering, once the ultimate source of his rage, becomes part of a healing process he did not expect. Instead of fueling destruction, it begins to guide him toward acceptance. The pain is still real, but it no longer defines him. He begins to understand that carrying this pain forward as revenge will only continue the cycle, while letting go may open the possibility of peace, not just for him, but for those he loves. In this moment of transition, Judah stands between two lives, the one built on anger and retaliation, and the one slowly forming through compassion and understanding. It is not an easy shift, and it does not happen instantly. Instead, it unfolds as a gradual realization, a breaking down of old beliefs and the slow rebuilding of something new. The world around him continues forward, but within Judah, a different kind of journey is taking place. It is no longer a journey across deserts, battlefields, or arenas. It is a journey inward toward forgiveness, toward meaning, and toward a kind of peace that cannot be achieved through victory alone. By the end of this section, Judah Ben-Hur is no longer simply a man seeking justice. He is becoming something deeper, a man learning how to release the weight of his past without losing the memory of it. The revenge is fading, the understanding is growing, and the final transformation is now within reach. In the final chapter of his long and painful journey, Judah Ben-Hur, portrayed by Charlton Heston, stands as a man completely transformed from who he was at the beginning of the story. The path that once began with privilege, shattered by betrayal from Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, has passed through slavery, survival, war, revenge, loss, and finally into understanding. Now, as the story reaches its conclusion, all of those experiences come together into a single moment of emotional and spiritual resolution. The final state of Judah's heart is no longer defined by rage or the desire for punishment. Instead, it is defined by acceptance, not in the sense of forgetting what happened, but in the sense of understanding what it all meant. The suffering he endured, the people he lost, and the choices he made along the way are no longer isolated events. They become part of a larger journey that has reshaped his identity completely. The presence and influence associated with Jesus Christ remains a powerful undercurrent in this conclusion. What began as a brief moment of unexpected kindness in the desert has now grown into a guiding force in Judah's understanding of forgiveness and redemption. The idea that mercy can exist even in a world filled with injustice has changed the way he sees both his past and his future. He no longer views strength as domination over others, but as the ability to rise above hatred and break the cycle of revenge. Judah's reunion with his family, which once represented the ultimate goal of his suffering, now becomes a symbol of healing rather than completion. Their survival and recovery are not just personal relief, they represent the restoration of what was broken, not through violence but through time, endurance, and grace. In their presence, Judah no longer sees the loss that defined him for so long, but instead sees a future that can still exist beyond it. As the emotional weight of everything settles, Judah reflects on the full journey that brought him here. The betrayal that destroyed his life did not define his ending, it defined his beginning. The years of suffering did not destroy him, they shaped him. And the revenge he once believed was necessary did not give him peace, it only brought him to the edge of understanding something greater. The story of Judah Ben-Hur is not simply one of revenge fulfilled or justice achieved. It is a story about transformation, about how a man consumed by anger can be reshaped by suffering into someone capable of forgiveness. It is about how pain, when fully experienced and understood, can lead not only to destruction but also to renewal. In the final emotional state of the film, everything comes into balance. The past remains part of Judah's memory, but it no longer controls him. The future is uncertain, but it is no longer filled with the same darkness that once defined his path. Instead, there is a quiet sense of peace, not because everything has been fixed, but because everything has been understood. By the end of the journey, Judah Ben-Hur is no longer the man who lost everything. He is the man who found something greater than what was lost, a sense of meaning that could not be taken away by betrayal, slavery, or even revenge. The suffering has ended, the hatred has faded, and what remains is peace. After the emotional transformation and inner peace that has begun to settle within Judah Ben-Hur, portrayed by Charlton Heston, the final chapter of the story moves into a calm but deeply meaningful conclusion. Everything that once defined his life, betrayal, slavery, revenge, suffering, and loss, now feels like a distant past that has already served its purpose. What remains is not emptiness but understanding. Judah is no longer the man who was consumed by anger against Messala, played by Stephen Boyd. Instead, he is someone who has walked through darkness and come out changed on the other side. The final moments of his journey are not filled with battle or conflict, but with reflection and emotional closure. His family, once lost to suffering and isolation, now stands as a symbol of survival and renewal. Their presence represents more than just reunion, it represents healing. The bond between them, though tested by years of pain, has not been destroyed. Instead, it has been reshaped by endurance and time. Judah no longer looks at them through the lens of tragedy alone, but through the lens of gratitude for what still remains. The influence associated with Jesus Christ continues to echo softly in the background of this ending. It is no longer a force that challenges Judah, but one that he begins to understand more deeply. The idea of forgiveness, once impossible to accept, now feels like the only path forward that does not continue the cycle of suffering. This realization does not erase the past, but it changes how the past is carried. Instead of being a burden, it becomes a lesson, one that shapes a more peaceful future. There is no final confrontation, no remaining enemy to defeat, and no unresolved battle left to fight. Messala's role in the story has already reached its conclusion, not just through physical defeat, but through the emotional and symbolic end of their rivalry. What remains is the impact of everything that has happened, the consequences of choices, the cost of hatred, and the possibility of forgiveness. As Judah stands in this final state of reflection, the journey that once seemed like a path of revenge is revealed to be something much greater. It was never only about defeating an enemy, it was about discovering what happens to a person when everything is taken away, and whether that person chooses to remain consumed by pain or find a way to move beyond it. Judah's choice in the end is not to forget, but to forgive and understand. The story closes not with triumph in the traditional sense, but with emotional resolution. The violence, struggle, and conflict that shaped the narrative are replaced by silence, peace, and acceptance. Judah Ben-Hur does not simply survive his journey, he is transformed by it. In the final message of the film, everything comes together into a simple but powerful truth. A life built on revenge can destroy everything, but a life rebuilt through forgiveness can restore what was lost within the soul. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing movie breakdowns. See you in the next video.